Let's say you have a hard-to-use area of turf in your yard that you'd like to convert into something else. I did such a job last summer myself, and I'd like to share a little know-how that worked really well. I did it myself because it's hard to hire a landscaper to do such a small job. If you do hire it out, they'll charge you a lot to cover their minimum costs, and it'll take a while for them to get to it. So, it makes sense to do it yourself. The main problem you face here is the removal and disposal of the existing turf. Renting a sod cutting machine is not trivial. If you can find one to rent for a day, it's still a 300-pound machine that takes an open-top pickup truck to transport, and it's not that easy to use. It doesn't make sense to go through that much trouble for such a small area. Now, tearing up the sod by hand bit by bit is backbreaking and tedious. On top of that, when you're done, you have a bunch of random sod scraps that you have to dispose of. So you beat the dirt off each one and throw them into your trash or compost bin. Or, to avoid that, maybe you decide you can load them all up and run them to the dump. Well, that's usually a long way away, and you have to pay a dump fee, and then you have to unload it all by hand. Instead, it's so much better if you can strip off the turf in nice, neat rolls like a powered sod cutting machine would do, but without the machine. You can skip the work of removing the backing dirt altogether, and the sod can be reused by someone else. If you put rolls of freshly cut sod out on Craigslist for free, it'll be gone within an hour. And if it's in good condition without much weed growth, you could probably even get some money for it. This is all way better than driving it to the dump and then paying them to take it. So here's a DIY method for making that happen. So get a few tools and miscellaneous items together first. You'll need a pointed shovel, a pickaxe that has a flat side to it, a tape measure, a hand shovel, a circular saw with a masonry blade, or just an old wood cutting blade you don't care about, a drill, a scrap of maybe like 1/2-inch rebar that's 2 to 5 feet long, and a scrap of 4x4 lumber, kind of like a fence post that's maybe 2.5 or 3 feet long. A dolly or a wheelbarrow is helpful for moving the sod rolls around, but it isn't required. You'll need to drill 2 perpendicular holes through the 4x4 scrap near one end for the rebar to pass through loosely. For 1/2-inch rebar, I drilled 3/4-inch holes. I drilled the holes in both ends of mine, but it turned out that they were only needed on one end. Furthermore, you probably only need to drill 1 hole. The second one just gives you more options for how you position the rebar, which acts as a lever. If you drill 2 holes, you can position it like every 90 degrees versus every 180 degrees or half turn if you've only drilled 1 hole. So start by taking a picture of the turf you're removing for your Craigslist ad later. This helps. Measure about 2 feet from one edge of the area being removed and lay your tape measure longitudinally, long ways, on that line to temporarily mark the edge of the strip of sod you're going to remove. Now cut along that line with a circular saw as deep as the saw will cut, a couple inches. Cutting dirt will dull a wood cutting blade. That's why I recommend using an old worn out blade that you don't care about for this project, or a masonry blade if you've got one. The saw moves a bit slow, but it's still much less work than trying to stand there and chop a straight, clean line with a shovel. You will look really silly cutting turf with a circular saw, so try and do this part while your neighbors are at work, or at night, or with a bag over your head maybe. You'll think of something. Now use the shovel and the pickaxe to lift the first foot or 2 of the sod strip. This is tedious, but I don't think there's any way of getting around it. Once you have a flap of sod free, maybe a foot or 2, wrap it around the 4x4 scrap, leaving the holes that you drilled sticking out at one end. Now put the rebar through the holes to use as a lever to roll the 4x4 along as the sod is ripped up. I found this to be a 2-person job, where one person applies pressure to the lever, while another slashes with a small hand shovel across the line where the sod is being separated from the ground. When I tried to skip the slashing, I found that the grass would try to take up too much dirt with it, or the strip of sod would want to tear from the amount of force required to do the ripping. So you help it along a little bit with the slashing. This could also vary, depending on how long the grass has been there. Mine was about 6 years old since it had been installed. The slashing seemed to help keep the amount of backing dirt nice and uniform, which helps the next person when they go to reinstall this sod somewhere else. Now, with a longish lever, my wife or one of my kids easily had the strength to apply the right amount of pressure to roll the 4x4 along. The job of slashing with a hand shovel was fairly demanding and tiring, so I did that part myself. After every half turn of the roll, push the rebar back through the hole and continue prying, slashing, and rolling. Sod becomes heavy quickly as the roll grows, so each strip will likely produce multiple rolls of sod. When the roll looks big enough and feels heavy enough, make a cut using a tool of your choice, being careful to leave a nice 2-foot flap of loose sod to start the next roll, to wrap around the bare 4x4 when you get it out. I use some tin snips, but the circular saw might work okay again if the cutting depth is set just right. Don't cut too deep. Again, you'll look silly cutting grass with a circular saw, but it's worth it if it saves you effort. Once the roll is free, pound the 4x4 wood piece out of the center using the butt of the pickaxe handle or whatever, and cart the sod roll off to your pile on the dolly or the wheelbarrow, or just heft it. So now use the 4x4 piece of wood to start the next roll. Wrap that 2-foot flap that we left loose around the 4x4 and get cranking. After the last strip of sod is off and on the pile, take a picture of the sod rolls all together, post it on Craigslist, and don't forget to include the picture of the turf before removal. I posted mine for free on a Saturday in August, and I had 8 people who wanted it within about 45 minutes. The first guy showed up in under 30 minutes, we loaded it up, and it was gone in less than an hour from the time when I posted it. Once I had the process figured out, I was able to crank through my 200 square feet of turf removal in less than a day, including getting it into the hands of someone else who could use it instead of just throwing it away. Having a process was a big help to me, and I hope it helps you too. Thanks for watching.